did, I looked at the radiation coming out from the steel pan. And you'll see, if you look at these two images here, I'll get a little bit more technical now. This is a pan that was a Cliff Alexis double tenor pan. And what we did was we excited or struck repeatedly the F sharp note, the loose F sharp note on this pan. And we put up a little grid, a measurement grid around it. And this is a very special microphone. You just go and you take measurements one at a time around the instrument. Then you have to sit down and compile all this data. And I was able to reconstruct that data on these maps. I mean, they're actually movies, which I hope will embarrass me now, get it though, right? That shows how the sound is emanating from the instrument. If you look at it, you see wave patterns, right? What's actually happening is that each one of these cones are actually growing in size and then decreasing in size. And for the technical people, sinusoidally. But you actually see the effect of that energy moving out from the radiating node, which is in this area right here, out from the pan. This is the corner where the node is coming from. You can actually see it just shooting out from this corner. This is what we call the active intensity, what electrical engineers call the real power component of the acoustic energy coming out. This is what you actually hear. This is energy that goes out in the far field. And then you have, I have to start this and then start this one. Oops. This is reactive intensity. Alright? It's kind of like reactive power that electrical engineers are familiar with. This is energy that is moving from one stored area to another. It's moving, it's a storage, it's energy stored that's moving from one mode of storage to the other. You notice that the patterns are different, it's circular patterns around the instrument. That's typical of reactive energy. That is acoustic in nature. And those of you who have got the speaker boxes playing around music equipment, when you see playing, could be real good for kids. Alright? I fooled around with equipment like mad when I was a young guy. If you go to a store and you want to buy a speaker, they will take the speaker and put it on flat on the counter like this, and they'll play for you. That's when you hear the bass. If you go from that, the bass is gone. And the reason is this. Right? The energy from the front is coming around, it's cancelling the energy from the back. Right? It's going back and forth, right, between the two, but there's a cancellation taking place. This kind of map is interesting from telling us the lengths of the screws, because you see, the longer this energy has to travel the diagram to the back, the more it gets converted into this thing, which is the actual radiated energy. Right? So that's the kind of studies we did. And we published a paper on that. This is a piece of work that I saw that kind of sold me on the link between art and science. This is actual data on the actual sound pressure that's emanating from the same band, but what we call the octave. So I think at this frequency of F, I think the frequency 195 cycles per second. So at 300,000, don't mind just one at me. Okay, he'll submit his, he's to submit his PhD later this year. Right, he's going up. Father has continued this work. I measured this data on a plane, he measured it in 3D space using acoustic holography, which is the same stuff that the US Army, US Navy uses also for submarine sonar. It looks like a butterfly in flight. Alright, doesn't it? And I ended up playing around with the graphs and the data here just to see what the patterns look like. I was interested in what it was actually saying, but we confirmed that what's coming from it was interesting. It was art. Right? And I always tell my students again, you know, art and science, math, physics, music, two sides of the same coin. Just see them with different eyes. Two sides of the same coin. That's the kind of stuff we should be teaching in school. Right? So, my awakening. Forgive me if I read this. So my collaboration with Prof. King in the archives increased my discomfort with what was there before me as a traditional life of an academic working in an underdeveloped nation. As academics, we were expected to follow the pattern established in the world, publish, or perish, of course, right? However, we observed that none of the intense intellectual efforts at the PhD and the MSc had any real consequence in the needs of the nation, nor to the region. Neither had the capability to even comprehend the significance of my discoveries. We were well paid, and I'm arguing that, but we were irrelevant to national development. Now, this observation led us to the conclusion that as academics and engineers, ours was a responsibility to help our nations develop an understanding of how to build self-sustaining economies. Our joint reflections, experiences, and thought-provoking discussions, and we had tons of those, led us to believe that the only way to achieve this objective was for the national or regional culture to change the one that was more innovative. I want to stop there a minute. I know, Masha, if I could take a slice from what you told us yesterday. And we were just talking generally yesterday, and you mentioned some about footprints. And I was like, okay, where is he going with this? Right? And he gave this sort of scenario of somebody coming through life, and you're drinking water, you take your bottle, you throw it. So how many bottles of water, how many plastic bottles do you dump? Right? If you don't put it all in one place, how much will be collected by the time you reach your life's end? What about the food you consume, the gas you consume, right? The carbon dioxide you put out? When you add all that up, that's a footprint. And I found that was significant. And I said, well, yeah, he's talking my language because I want to make sure my footprint counts and has an impact. So that people who come after me, their footprints could count and have an impact as well. So I thank you for that insight. Right, innovation and culture. Just a few quick definitions again. I have to go professorial here. Right, innovation, I have to clear it up. If you were to take it straight from the Latin translation, it means something new, but you've twisted it and modified it to mean a lot else. And innovation is a part of a process that has been created anew, yes, but it also has begun to produce returns on investment. So it can't be any widget that you come up with overnight. You have invented at that point in time. If you can sell the widget, you have innovated. That's how all economists see it. It's very important to give you a perspective because you see, they tell us a lot about what's going on as far as the economies of the countries are concerned. Innovation embodies the successful implementation of an invention or new idea, which is repeating the same thing. An innovative culture is based on continual innovation as part of its wealth generation mechanism. You must always be innovating. If you stand still, you die. Okay, so how do you typify nations with a strong innovative culture? Well, on average, they have a better quality of life. They tend to be wealthy, and someone pointed out to me, I can't remember who, you can be wealthy but not necessarily have riches, because you can measure wealth in all kinds of different ways. Fact remains true, that you have to have a measure, and you have to be crass about it. General measure is in fact in dollars and cents. You can put a value to it. They tend to have high productivity. They have a high resilience to the disturbances in the world markets. Does that count these days? They have an agile industrial commerce sector. You can change very, very quickly. I often tell my students, I point my students to sugar, which even when I was going to school 30 years ago, people were saying, look, it's not no longer a lucrative industry. We did not have the wherewithal to create a new one to replace the sugar. And we had only, well, you know what happened in between then and now. And an innovative culture is better prepared to respond to the gamut of natural and man-made challenges. Why? Because you're thinking all the time, and you're playing with thinking all the time. And as you think, you're creating and you're making your thoughts reality. So if you have to create a thought and you to solve a problem, you walk the trail already. You know how to do it. No fear. Now, humans have always innovated. Through what? Stone Age, copper, iron, whatever, all the different ages, industrial era, that's innovation. We are a being that are created to think and to solve problems. The steel pan itself is an innovation, but it's one that shows us how weak this nation is. It's innovative culture. There's no country in this world that is called developed that would take 60 or 70 years to take as brilliant an invention as the steel pan and make it into a real commercial reality. You've done fairly well with it. I mean, I can show you some tuners that won't call their names, would be like, okay. But by and large, the overall country, all of us, we haven't really benefited, apart from the carnival thing and so on, in terms of real value, we have not really benefited from it. So it's innovative, but not enough. There are levels of innovation.